The mule's hooves pressed soft prints into the dust, the silence of the high plain broken only by the faint jingle of harness rings and the creak of old leather. Silas Boone, tall and sun-baked, rode with the weight of time in his posture, shoulders hunched beneath the yoke of years. His wide-brimmed hat cast a shadow down his cheek, and the scar beneath his left eye caught the evening light like a pale flame. He didn't rush. He never did. That was how fences got mended, and hearts too, if such things could be said of either. The town of Mercy Ridge shimmered in the distance, its rusted roofs and tilted signs crouched low against the wind. It was the kind of place that remembered too long and forgave too little. Silas dismounted by the general store and tied up the mule. He moved with the kind of calm that people mistook for detachment, but it was grief, and it was old. He stepped into the store, nodding once to Miss Thistle, who clutched her spectacles at the sight of him, as if he were a strange season returned early. He bought beans, nails, kerosene, and salt. Then, as he stepped outside, the world shifted. She came from the alley beside the barber's, not much more than a blur at first, bare feet kicking up powder, dress faded and torn like it had belonged to someone else. She was no more than 7, dark hair tangled like tumbleweed, a solemn look carved into her features too early. She clutched a baby swaddled in thin muslin. She stopped in front of Silas. Her voice didn't waver. "Can you buy us, mister?" For a moment, the breeze stilled. Silas frowned, a quiet squint of disbelief. The girl didn't flinch. "Mama says we don't got no place. She's trying, but folks won't let her." She looked down at the baby, whose breathing rasped like wind through a crack in the barn wall. "He cries less when I hold him real still." Behind them, slow as dusk, the mother appeared. She wore the posture of someone who'd been walking far and folding into herself with each mile. Her auburn hair was matted, tucked beneath a sun-bleached bonnet. Her dress was simple, almost proper, but frayed at every hem. Her eyes met Silas's, then dropped, not in fear, but out of knowing, like she'd already read what the town thought of her and had stopped arguing with it. "Daisy," she said gently, "we don't ask strangers." The girl didn't move. "He don't look mean." Silas looked between them. He opened his mouth to speak, but words felt too large for the moment. Instead, he reached down, offering his calloused hand. Daisy took it, small fingers curled trustingly around his. "You got a cart?" Clara asked softly, not assuming, not pleading, just asking, like a neighbor might ask if the rain had come to his pasture. He nodded. Whispers slithered from the nearby porch. Miss Thistle's sharp voice hissed to no one and everyone. "That's the Dalton woman. Ran off with a gambler. Preacher's daughter, no less." Silas didn't answer. He simply led the way to his wagon, helped Daisy up, then Clara with the baby. He didn't speak until the mule started moving. "Where you coming from?" "North of Amber Ridge," Clara said. "My husband died 2 weeks ago. House burned. No one wanted to rent to a woman. We walked." He looked at her then, a longer look. "You should have stopped sooner." She turned her face away. "They always see me before I speak." The sun was dropping now, bleeding gold across the horizon. The ride back to his ranch was long, quiet, broken only by the rhythmic rocking of wheels and the occasional cough from the baby. Clara spoke again, quieter this time. "We'll be gone by morning. I'll cook supper to pay for the kindness. And I won't let Daisy be in your way." He didn't answer, just flicked the reins once, guiding the mule through the last rise of dry hills. The wind whispered along the brush like it had something it wanted to say but didn't dare. The ranch sat alone, surrounded by dying grass and brittle fences. The barn was upright, the house not much more than weathered boards holding up hope. He pulled up, helped them down without speaking. Clara moved like someone who knew not to assume anything permanent. That night, she cooked beans and cornbread without asking where the pans were. She moved quietly through the kitchen, like she'd done it before. Daisy rocked the baby near the fire, humming something tuneless. Silas sat in the corner, the light catching on the framed photo of a woman long gone, tucked onto the mantel. After supper, Clara washed the dishes and refused his chair. She laid a blanket for Daisy and the baby by the hearth, curled beside them like a barrier between the cold and the children. Just before sleep took her, Clara said aloud, "You don't need to tell me no one's gonna understand." Silas looked up from the chair. "I ain't worried about them." She didn't smile, but her breath came easier. Midnight stirred with a strange wind. Coyotes howled far off, but inside the house, it was quiet. The kind of quiet that felt like the pause before something changes. Then, from outside, a noise. Sharp, angry, the unmistakable click of a rifle being cocked. Silas was on his feet, lantern in hand. At the front porch stood Elder Whitby, tall and stony, flanked by two local ranch hands. Behind him, Sheriff Rourke hung back, face hard to read. "Silas," Whitby said, voice stiff with righteousness, "you're harboring a woman of ill repute, and children that ain't yours." Silas stepped onto the porch, lamp casting gold across his shoulders. "She's a widow. Town says otherwise. The girl's got no papers. The boy's not right." Inside, Clara was already gathering the baby. Daisy held her doll to her chest like a shield. Silas took a breath that tasted of fire and rust. "They're under my roof. That's all the law needs to know." Sheriff Rourke stepped forward, eyes flicking between them. "Ain't a crime to give someone shelter. Let it be, Whitby." The older man narrowed his eyes. "This isn't over." The men turned and faded into the dark, the sound of horses swallowing their retreat. Back inside, Clara didn't speak. Silas shut the door, bolted it, and leaned his weight against the frame as though he could keep the whole world out. Then, finally, he looked at her, not at her shame, or her past, or what the town whispered, but at her, a woman who still stood. He said just one thing: "You can't stay." And in the firelight, Clara didn't cry. She just nodded once, like someone who'd finally found a place to exhale. The rooster's call broke over the ridge, clear and sharp, like a needle through linen. Mist hung over the ranch like a second skin, the sun not yet brave enough to bane it off. Silas Boone rose early, as he always had, and stepped out onto the porch barefoot, mug in hand, steam curling into the air like ghost breath. But this morning, the house was not silent. From the barn came the rhythm of water sloshing, and from the open window, the smell of frying cornbread teased at the corners of memory. Clara Mae Dalton stood by the stove, apron wrapped snug at the waist, sleeves rolled past the elbow. She moved without hurry, pouring batter into the cast-iron pan with the ease of someone who knew the feel of a kitchen, though not, perhaps, one that ever felt like home. The baby lay in a wooden crate lined with blankets, cheeks pink, but the cough still low and troubling. Daisy sat on the floor brushing the old mule's tail with a stolen spoon. "You didn't have to," Silas murmured from the doorway, voice barely risen. "I did," Clara said. "You let us stay." Silas didn't argue. He sat, tipped his hat back, and let the warmth of the fire carry through the floor into his bones. No more was said, but something passed between them in that quiet, recognition, perhaps, or something soft blooming slow and without name. After breakfast, Clara followed him to the barn. She mucked stalls while he repaired the gate latches. She didn't ask what needed doing. She simply saw it. Daisy trailed them both, asking questions about fence lines and coyotes and how come cows looked so sad even when they were full. Silas listened more than he answered. At midday, Clara found a sun-bleached crate of old linens and scrubbed them clean in a tub out back, her hands raw from lying cold water. Silas saw her pause at one cloth, a child's dress, patched and faded, and fold it slower than the rest. "I was a preacher's daughter once," she said without looking up, "before I married Raymond Dalton." Silas said nothing. She wrung the cloth once and kept going. "He had charm," she continued, "and lies so sweet they tasted like honey. Took me from everything I knew. Then took everything else, too." She hung the last of the linens on the line and looked him square. "If I had any shame left, I left it in the ashes." The wind pulled at the edges of her dress. Silas picked up a coil of rope, hands steady. "You work hard," he said. It wasn't praise. It was fact. The kind people never gave her. That evening, the sheriff came riding slow through the gate, dust rising behind him like a question waiting to be answered. Clara stepped out with Daisy close behind, a wet cloth pressed to the baby's forehead. "Folks talking, Silas," Sheriff Rourke said without dismounting. Elder Whitby's calling for a town vote. Says you're housing indecency under the Lord's sky. Silas stood still, thumbs tucked into his belt. You here to enforce gossip? I'm here to make sure it don't turn into torches. Clara raised her chin. You want us gone, Sheriff? Rourke looked at her, long and quiet. I want peace. And Whitby's got half the church in his A. You do better somewhere else. And where's that? Clara asked. We've been chased out of every mile since Amber Ridge. Daisy stepped in front of her mother. We ain't hurting nobody. We help. The sheriff sighed, tipping his hat back. I'll give you 3 days. After that, Whitby'll push it to council. He turned his horse and rode off, the dust he kicked up feeling more final than any words he left behind. That night, the house felt smaller, as if judgment had slipped through the cracks in the wood and curled up beside them. Clara stirred soup slowly. Silas watched the fire too long. The baby coughed, a dry rattle that made Clara close her eyes and press her lips together like she could hold the sickness back through will alone. I'll go, she said finally. I won't let you lose this place over me. Silas didn't answer. He stood and walked to the barn. When he came back, he carried a carved block of pine, shaped into something crude but unmistakable, a doll, with long painted lashes and a crooked smile. He set it on the table. For Daisy, he said. Clara stayed at it, hands trembling around the ladle. Then she sat today, slowly, like she hadn't allowed herself to in years. I'm not used to people staying kind. I ain't used to having anyone here at all, he replied. The next morning, the baby burned with fever. Clara's panic was quiet, controlled, but her eyes shone with fear. He needs a doctor, she said. He won't last long without something for the lungs. Silas hitched the mule and helped them into the wagon without another word. Mercy Ridge seemed colder than before, its faces turned sharper, eyes narrowing as they passed. Miss Thistle crossed the street without a glance. Elder Whitby stood like stone outside the apothecary, arms folded. Sheriff said 3 days, he growled as they approached. You don't get to parade your sins down Main Street. Clara held the baby tighter. Please, she said. He's just a child. I won't have your kind fouling this town. You're no wife, no widow, and that child's half dead already. Daisy looked to Silas, blinking back tears. Tell him, mister. Tell him we're good. Silas stepped forward, not with fury, but a calm that cracked like thunder. They're under my roof, he said. That makes the mind to protect. Give the boy the medicine. Now. Whitby's face twisted. You'll damn yourself standing beside that woman. Silas looked him dead in the eyes. I already know what damnation feels like. I'd rather stand beside her. Sheriff Rourke stepped from behind the crowd. That's enough, Whitby. The apothecary door opened. I've got laudanum. Fever tonic too. No one moved. Then Whitby spat in the dirt and turned away. Clara sagged forward, barely catching herself. Silas steadied her. The baby stirred, still burning up, but alive. And in that moment, beside dust, judgment, and fire, Clara didn't cry. She just looked at Silas as if trying to memorize something she never believed she'd have again. Safety. Spring crept in without asking permission. The wild prairie turned green at the edges, cautious and quiet, like someone testing forgiveness. At Silas Boone's ranch, the ground softened just enough for Clara May to plant her hands in the soil. She worked in silence, sleeves rolled to the elbow, coaxing seeds into rows with careful fingers. Not because she hoped, exactly, but because hope had begun to root inside her when she wasn't looking. Daisy chased chickens barefoot, her laughter a sound the ranch hadn't known in years. The baby, Jonah, she'd finally said his name aloud, was stronger now. His cough had dulled, replaced with soft gurgles and sleepy smiles. Clara still watched his chest rise and fall in the dark each night, still feared the silence between breaths. But fear no longer ruled her. Not he. Silas came in late from the pasture, dust in his beard and the scent of horse sweat clinging to him. He nodded at Clara where she knelt by the sprouts. She looked up, brushing hair from her cheek, and for the first time, didn't immediately look down again. You'll get blisters, he said. I've had worse. Silas hesitated, then crouched beside her, letting his fingers sink into the dirt. You planted marigolds. They keep the snakes away, she replied. And folks think they're cheerful. He didn't smile. Not fully, but something close stirred beneath his scar. Ain't had anything bloom on this land in years. Clara looked at him, really looked. Then maybe it's time. They stayed like that for a moment, neither speaking, the wind threading between them like a blessing too shy to land. But peace doesn't linger long in places like Mercy Ridge. It's too easily chased off by the sharp crack of human pride. News came from the feed store. Elder Whitby had taken his case to the town council. He called it a matter of moral rot, of protecting the fabric of community. There'd be a vote in 2 days, formal, binding. If the people of Mercy Ridge deemed Clara May Dalton unsuitable, the sheriff would have no choice but to evict her and the children from the county. Clara said nothing when she heard. She simply wiped her hands on her apron and went back to kneading dough. But Silas saw her shoulders stiffen, so the tremble in the flour-covered knuckles. That night, under lamplight, he sat across from her and poured 2 cups of coffee. They'll make a spectacle of it, he said. They want you gone. They'll find a way. Clara nodded slowly. They don't have to burn a witch to chase one out. Just whisper long enough. You don't have to run. She met his gaze. I always run. You don't have to this time. Clara looked at her children asleep by the hearth. Even if I stay, they won't forget what I was. Silas's voice was low. They can forget what you were, or they can learn who you are. The next morning, Clara walked into town wearing her plainest dress and no bonnet. Silas rode beside her, jaw clenched, the mule slow and stubborn beneath him. People watched them pass, murmurs stirring like dry leaves. The town hall doors loomed, wide and heavy, and within, the seats were full, men with hats off, women clutching Bibles too tightly. The baby was wrapped to Clara's chest. Daisy walked tall beside her, holding Silas's calloused hand like it had always been hers. Elder Whitby stood at the front, white hair slicked, eyes sharp with righteousness. She is not married. She is not chaste. She comes with no reference, no means, and no apology. He turned to the gathered crowd. Is this who we wish to raise children, eh? To bring sickness, lawlessness, disgrace? A murmur of agreement rolled through the pews. Then Silas stepped forward. She's fed my land, healed my animals, cared for what I had left. She's worked harder than any man I've known, and she never asked for pity, just a place to stand. The room went quiet. You want to talk about disgrace, he went on. You sat warm in your houses while she walked through snow. You closed your doors. I didn't, and I won't. He turned, facing Clara now. If you want to stay, you stay. You've earned it. Clara didn't speak. She placed her hand over her son's back and stared at the crowd, not in defiance, but with a quiet kind of sorrow. Then she said, softly, I'm not asking you to like me, just to see that I'm trying. The vote passed. Narrowly, but it passed. Afterward, outside the hall, Miss Thistle approached with a jar of preserves. Blueberry, she said, not meeting Clara's eyes. You'll need something for biscuits. And just like that, the first stone loosened from the wall. Weeks passed, then months. Clara stayed. Jonah grew stronger. Daisy learned to ride. The marigolds bloomed bright as coin by the front steps. Silas watched it all unfold, never rushing it, never naming it. But one evening, he reached out without thinking and brushed a smudge of flour from Clara's cheek. She leaned into the touch like someone who hadn't been held in years and had forgotten it was allowed. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. And still, the nights whispered. Clara sat often on the porch, baby sleeping in her lap, and watched the stars turn above Mercy Ridge. One night, she said to Silas, I thought safety was a place. He looked at her, eyes soft. But it's just a person who doesn't flinch when you break. She nodded once. Thank you for not flinching. He took her hand, rough palm to rough palm, and across the fence line, the wind rolled in warm, soft as forgiveness. Now, dear heart, if ever you find yourself wandering, tired, judged, half wild with shame, remember this. Sometimes, it's not thunder that saves you. Sometimes, it's a porch light left on, A man who says nothing but stays. A little girl who asks, "Can you buy us, mister?" And someone who says, "You can stay."